if you've been following along, you've probably been frustrated that we're stuck with these fonts, especially if you're one of those people who likes to create a document and change the default font right away. So let's go ahead and change the default font. Let's go ahead and do we could do body or HTML. We'll do HTML. And we'll ask for a font family. Now, unfortunately, choosing a font in the type that displays in CSS and on the web is not easy. It is, in fact, a game of guessing, because you cannot have them display a font that does not exist on their own computer. Now, that's not quite true, and in another later tutorial we can talk about ways of loading fonts in. But generally speaking, at least traditionally, we have to rely on whatever fonts happen to be installed on the user's machine. And so I have to guess what those fonts are. Now, on most computers, I could guess, for example, that Times New Roman exists both on PCs and Macs and most Linux machines. Although, to be honest, I'm not sure that Times New Roman exists on, say, an Android mobile device, right? So it really is a game of hunting. So let's say I wanted to use some traditional sans serif fonts. Just as a reminder, we're not going to talk about fonts here, but a serif is this thing right here, and this is spelled wrong. It should be sans serif with an S, but you can either have it with serifs or not serifs, is one way of describing large families of fonts. So let's say we wanted to, right now we have a serif font by default. Let's say we wanted to replace that with a sans serif font. What are some popular sans serif fonts? Well, again, it really depends on what computer you're on. I'm a fan on Microsoft computers, Microsoft operating systems, of a font called Trebuchet MS, and in at least most modern operating systems and browsers for Windows, you'll be able to get Trebuchet MS. So I could just do that, but then what about all the Mac love? What do I do for them? Well, what I'll say is, as a second choice, if Trebuchet isn't available, go ahead and use Helvetica. Helvetica is not always available on PCs. Sometimes it is, depending on whether someone just installed it, but it's generally available on Macs. So what this says is try for Trebuchet first. If Trebuchet is not there, try for Helvetica. Now, a quick note here, because remember that spaces do weird things. Because spaces do weird things, we need to put quotes around any font that has more than one word in it. So because Trebuchet space MS has that space in it, or if you wanted to use Times space New space Roman, Times New Roman, you have to put quotes around it. Now, again, we aren't guaranteed that the computer has either of these things. Is there a font that we're guaranteed that it will have? Yes. There are a set of 4 fonts that by standard every browser has to produce, and one of them is just a plain old sans serif. Now, we don't know quite what that font will look like. We'll know that it'll be a sans serif font, but we're not exactly sure what it is. In practice, a lot of people claim that on the PCs, on Windows machines, it's Arial, and on Macs it's Helvetica, but we're never really positive. All we know for sure is that if we say sans serif, the browser by standard has to produce sans serif. So I'm going to save this, file save, and I'll refresh this page. Now, a quick note, just because we already know this, but I want to highlight it. I've changed HTML, which is the parent of all of these, and this font family has trickled down to the H1. It's trickled down to all of the LIs, to the P, to the A. So again, that it inherits, the whole page ends up inheriting this font choice. All right, I'm just going to leave it at that. Often you'll see very long strings of these of designers kind of making votes for what they really wanted in this particular font style. But it's always this question of guessing what the user might have on their machine, and then always ending in either serif or sans serif or one of the other two that are much less common, saying, you know, if all else fails, at least go back to either a serif or a sans serif font. All right.